Hey, what's up, guys? My name's Eric, and we're back for another review of a diplomacy online tournament game. This is from the Nexus Season 2 Finals. So thank you for all of you that played in this game, and thank you to Tyler for sharing it with me. I know Season 3 is underway, and this video will be recapping the entire game. I'm going to be looking at strategy, tactics, and occasionally mentioning negotiation. That's the aspect of the game that is the most interesting to me, and I don't think I'll be able to I don't think I'll be able to restrain myself from mentioning, although I don't have access to the press. One thing that I'm looking at over the next couple of years as I work to build an online tournament site for diplomacy is really to figure out how to bring the excitement of face-to-face real-time diplomacy negotiation into an online space. I had such a great time playing, for example, in the Weezamoot tournament back in April of 2019, and I'm planning to play in many more tournaments as the years go, as well as continuing to support what I'm doing in the MN Diplomacy Club here in Minnesota. But I also think there's a lot of room to bring that negotiation aspect into the online game in an even elevated fashion. So with that, let's look at this game from the Nexus Season 2 Finals. Right away, we're going to take a look at some of the openings. I'm not going to take too long on this because I really want to see how the mid-game develops into the end game. So we're going to be skipping a lot of some of even the more obvious details just for the service of looking for those interesting spots. So right away, what I'm noticing here is that we have Russia holding Warsaw, while Vienna does go to Galicia. So to me, that's pretty interesting. I'm curious how the press went there, and everything else looks like pretty standard. The move to Picardy instead of Burgundy is interesting, but overall, that's probably within standard opening theory. And let's go ahead and take it into the fall. So here what we can see is that I guess a couple of things. Well, first of all, France is doing really well, picking up 3 neutral supply centers. England is bouncing Germany out of Holland. That's pretty interesting. Early antagonism there. Germany, meanwhile, allows Russia into Sweden. Galicia is unsure of what Italy is going to do, so he returns to Vienna. Meanwhile, Italy was going after Munich, and Ruhr slid back to defend that. And in the south, Italy takes with the fleet, since his Tyrolean attack was blocked by the Austrian hedgehog in the spring with Trieste to Venice. And now that fleet goes to Albania itself. I think that's a pretty smart move there, because it's unlikely that the Italian will count on you moving that. So I think it is nice to pick up that tempo, even though you did have to use it to break up the Italian attack. Keep that in the back of your mind, though, if I'm Austria, that Italy was looking for a 5th center from me right away, even though now he's decided to go after Germany's center. I guess we don't know for sure. He was just looking to get Venice and Tyrolia, right? There's a lot of continuations from there. You could even, as someone in our club games likes to play, in the fall, Tyrolia to Bohemia and Venice to Tyrolia, and build Venice for 3 armies in that corridor there next to Austria. And it's pretty hard to defend as Austria. I'm more of a fan of working with Austria as Italy myself. These are some of the details that I said I wouldn't go into. So we take a quick look at Russia picking up Romania and getting a good position in Galicia. And Greece will remain unopened. I like that Turkey didn't go there himself because his armies would have been split, right? So decent play all around there. Russia, after a little bit of a suspect opening, will actually pick up 2 builds here. It'll be interesting to see where they'll go. So Army Moscow, Army Warsaw for Russia, Army Budapest for Austria, Fleet Smyrna, Fleet Naples, Fleet Munich. I like that. Fleet London. I also like that. The only possibility of changing here would be to consider. I mean, I think building 2 fleets from France's perspective, it keeps him balanced between armies and fleets 3 and 3. I was gonna consider building an army in Marseille, but that could be conceived of as anti-German, and it seems like so far, staying out of Burgundy, he wants to show that he's at least having a neutral attitude towards Germany right here. So into the spring we go of 1902. So here's where we get some committal moves. England slides into Barents and convoys the army and protects the channel from France. So it doesn't appear that France and England are working together right away. Although this could be an arranged bounce to disguise that. Meanwhile, it looks like France isn't overtly looking to work with the German, but feels like he wants to self-bounce from Paris. I feel like that might just be to honor some kind of a DMZ there. If I'm France, I don't mind having my army in Burgundy in this situation. But we do have the army coming from Gascony soon as well. Now that army can be used in a number of ways. If I'm attacking France, I can use that to convoy later. It's also useful defensively. So I'm very interested to see what the alliance play looks like here. And Munich actually played into Tyrolia. It looks like he's trying to preserve Austria because Austria looks like he's under fire here. I think that's pretty good strategy from Germany. And Russia does seem to anticipate the English move here, even though he could have himself built in St. Petersburg, and slides up into St. Petersburg himself, bouncing Turkey in the south, in the Black Sea. And it doesn't seem like there's that much coordination between any of these players in the Balkans, so we'll see how that progresses. And good news for Turkey, he takes Aegean unobstructed. Ionian and Apulia, that seems to be headed to the Adriatic. And Austria does pick up Greece for now. In the fall, it seems like there's, possible coordination available between, several of these powers. It looks like Italy, Italy has just moved into Trieste, so his opening move of Tyrolia and Venice, which is generally seen as anti-Austrian, seems to have suggested his medium-term intentions there, even though he did make a stab for Munich. Probably in the mid-game, Germany may be disinclined to work with Italy. It gets to that point based on that kind of ambitious move, but it also in the near term is fine. Like if Italy were to have picked up Munich, that would have been pretty nice. Meanwhile, comes back to Trieste himself, and Austria did the best he could to defend against the Russian attack on Budapest, and does so, but he has to give up Trieste in the process. So here we go in the fall. We actually do now see some combination play. We see Greece helping the Aegean into the Ionian. So the Ionian actually does retreat to into Tunis, but he'll be able to build because he's holding on to Trieste here. Interestingly, Austria also helps Turkey. So Turkey is probably made the offer and said, Austria, you look like you need a friend, and Austria was happy to stay alive, even though in a mid-game, perhaps that's not the most ideal partnership for Austria, but seeing as both Russia and Italy were both attacking him, he smartly, it seems, took the offer from Austria and said, look, I'll help you into Romania, I'll help you into the Ionian, and let's see where it goes from there. So Austria is picking up a build. Turkey is picking up a build. Will be on 5. Austria is staying flat with 4, losing Trieste, but picking up Greece. Italy goes up 1. And it seems like he'll have to build in Naples, given that the Turkish fleet is now there, and he'll be able to retake the Ionian in the spring, it seems. And that looks like the Eastern Theater. The Western Theater now is looking really interesting because France has gone ahead and made the move into Mao and the Channel, whilst the English, after that early antagonism around Holland, offered Germany support into Belgium. So Germany picks up 2 here after starting off with 4 in 01. Meanwhile, England also makes a move against Russia, although with a bit of a guessing game, Russia is going to pick up Norway here, whilst England picks up Sweden and St. Pete. So England's going to go up 2 and easily going to be able to defend against that French attack, whilst France will go down from 6 to 5. So maybe a little bit of an early leader syndrome there. As France, if you've read Richard Sharp's The Game of Diplomacy, which I do highly recommend, even though it was written in the 70s, he talks about not wanting to go up to 6 as France, because, you draw attention to yourself. I think same goes for Germany on 6, or even Austria on an occasional 6. Russia, not so much, but I'm usually comfortable with 5 as Russia in 01, but 6 is fine too. Depends on the situation. Well, let's see the builds. So Austria elects to remove Greece because, and I misspoke moments before, he has actually lost Vienna as well. And the German army is able to vacate Munich, so he can build there. And he also builds in Berlin. That's interesting also to see that it's another army, not a fleet. We'll see how that plays, because I have a feeling that England is going to have a considerable fleet superiority here, and also we have to always deal with the Russian fleet coming into the Baltic at one point. England goes ahead and builds Fleet London. And now France actually removes the fleet in the North Atlantic, so maybe he'll be able to repair the situation with England, at least. As we know, we are able to negotiate during build and retreat phases in this tournament, so That's quite different from other tournament formats, at least in many face-to-face tournaments, where that is not happening, and the game is kind of moved along, and you have to make those decisions without negotiation. I do like to, in those situations, make my negotiations ahead of time. And with that, let's head into the spring of 1903. By the way, I should also mention that Turkey has picked up an army, or has added an army in Smyrna. So it seems like he wants to make a play against Russia here, seeing that Russia is weak. Russia had to make a tough choice and kept both of his northern units and removed Gal. Tough decision there. There is an argument to keep that fleet, let go Norway, and keep Gal, right? Gal, Ukraine, and Sev is pretty solid in the south. That fleet, meanwhile, in the north can still be useful later once I have time to get an army into Moscow. Now, depending on what's happening in the west, I may be able to, force my way back into St. Pete at one point. If England is occupied with either France or Germany, and I can cause a lot of havoc in Scandinavia with that fleet as well. 1903. What's happening here? Well, we do, as predicted, see this movement here against Russia as Turkey. And interestingly, Russia goes to attempts a move against Turkey. Now, he must have felt there was a large chance of this succeeding, because he knew he would be giving up the Black Sea. But he felt that if there was a chance of this succeeding, let's say 75%, then that army is going to be piffed in the spring. The army would have no valid retreats, assuming that something came into Galicia. And so that's a pretty big gamble that he took there, because, he probably saw Armenia coming and had to do something about that. Otherwise, he would simply be losing Sev in the fall. This was another case to keep Galicia on the board. But nevertheless, tough spot to be in. You really needed someone to turn around and help you in that spot. Meanwhile, Italy kind of activates his fleets here, but interestingly is knocked out of both Vienna and Trieste. So German support is coming for Austria, and he's able to help himself into Vienna as well. And the Italian is now retreating to Galicia. So this could be good news for the Russian, right? Because now there is a unit that can be of service, perhaps, in something around Romania. Let's look at the west. What's going on? Berlin comes into Kiel. So the idea of building that army in Berlin still was a little confusing to me. But I would have to see the press to understand why that decision was made. To be fair, I feel like a fleet Kiel would have been stronger, and I can simply play to the Baltic and prevent what has just happened now, where we have the Russian fleet arriving there. And that's possibly going to be annoying, depending on if Russia's on side or not with me. Meanwhile, there were a couple of supports offered from the German to the Russian, which were not accepted. The Russian actually went back to St. Petersburg, where it succeeded. And we have the English fleet in the north actually breaking into Denmark. So another case there as well. It looks like the English player has first helped the German into Belgium, so knocking down a player who's attacking him. The previous year we had the fleet in North Atlantic from France, and then going ahead and improving his own position in Scandinavia. So very interesting play from England. Seems like he's trying to play both sides of this and succeeding. Although we'll see, because it doesn't seem like he has any clear allies. However, his position continues to strengthen. Meanwhile, France does finally play and take Burgundy, so we'll see how that plays for him long term. And meanwhile, I am very curious to see what Italy's response is now. It seems like he's going to lose Trieste and Vienna, so can he hold on? Can he recapture center so he doesn't have to remove 2 units? That's going to be the question coming in the fall. So it did look like France was swinging that fleet to the south coast to go ahead and make the move into the Western Med. It seems like okay. I'm fine. I'm fine with both the Italian and the French players' moves here. I certainly wouldn't want to have the fleet there. If I was France, I would not want to see that Italian fleet in the Western Med. Meanwhile, Italy is going to take Greece here, and Russia does go ahead and offer him support into Romania, which does allow him to keep Sev. So as suggested, we saw this happening, possibly in the spring, and Russia really needed to make a deal, and I think Italy was smart to take that deal as well. Tough luck there for Turkey. However, at least his near-term cooperator in Austria was able to regain 2 centers, lose 1 center, so we'll be +1, and was able to open up a center for the build. That's a really key play. You see the self bounce right here between Vienna and Trieste, while Budapest makes the move to Serbia. So these 2 units are going to be bouncing whilst he stays on 4 and will be building an army. So let's take scope of this, and I'll make a couple comments in the Western Theater too. Don't worry. Turkey's going to go down to 4, but still has a solid position. Black Sea, Aegean Sea, Bulgaria, and Armenia. I'd be a little concerned of how many Italian fleets there are here, but Italy is going to be in a little bit of trouble from the Austrian point of view with those 4 armies, where the imbalance could come back to hurt Italy here. Too many fleets versus his neighboring enemy now in Austria, in terms of the number of armies that Austria has. So I'm not feeling too overwhelmed as Turkey. There's actually quite a lot of balance on the eastern portion of the board here, especially with Russia regaining St. Petersburg here in exchange for losing Norway. But I'm really happy as Russia to get back my home center here. And to be fair, I don't have any enemies on my border anymore, especially since England is going to be a little bit preoccupied in this attack on Germany for the moment. So I may have some grounds to reestablish some relationships and find a way back into this game. It's obviously not good that I've given up the Black Sea, but I feel a lot better than I did 1 year ago. Italy seems strong. However, there is an imbalance, right? I want to have more armies on the board than I have, and Germany has just helped Austria get back into his position. So, what is my plan going forward here from a negotiation standpoint with neighbors? I've not done so well in my initial grab for centers there. Although I do have an interesting army in Romania, which we can still use, and it seems like Russia is happy to cooperate with me, which is good in the near term. France, while they had that big early game build, they are very much in a fight here with Germany, and so my fleet superiority, at least in the Mediterranean for now, is gonna dissuade. I mean, even if France had some fleets, it would dissuade them from moving my direction too soon. From the west, looks and feels like Germany is in a bit of trouble, having now lost Belgium back to France, and definitely seen some pressure from England as well. Let's jump into 1904 and see how. Well, let's first see the builds, and then make some predictions for the mid game here as we enter it. So England goes ahead and puts an army down on Liverpool. In general, I like this kind of play as a deterrent against France having some ideas about coming up the side door again. And France was able to remove that army in Ruhr that was retreating, and is able to put down 2 fleets. So 3 fleets again for France, and he puts it down. Well, we have to build in Brest and Marseille if we're building fleets. Army as expected in Austria. Fleet removed from Italy in Tunis. That looks good from my point of view. And another fleet put down in Smyrna for Turkey. So actually there, Turkey was able to hold on to the Aegean. I misread those orders. So I'm feeling really good as Turkey right now. I've really got a position here that is going to be tough to break down unless there's a concerted effort. So now I can begin looking for paths either into Russia. I'm probably going to continue working with Austria if I can, because I can always make the stab later at the right moment, and continue growing steadily from my corner position, which is pretty snug right now. Russia, as we already discussed, just got back into the game, got back into St. Petersburg. And we felt that Germany was under a lot of pressure here. Only 4 armies and no fleets, and a lot of fleets on its borders. And having just lost Belgium, it's not looking great. However, that is a fleet in Belgium, and so France is going to have to do some maneuvering to put some pressure on the homeland. I think I can afford to bring Tyrolia back into Munich now and get pretty snug. I probably want to make some concrete offers to Russia, even though I don't prefer to work with them in the long term. We're kind of the 2 powers that are getting picked on here, so I may try to work something out with Denmark, and maybe after I pick up Denmark, I can support the Russian into Sweden to get him out of the Baltic. So that might be a concrete offer I can make to Russia in the near term. Meanwhile, it looks like England is very snug, so both of the corner powers very snug, and France also doing just fine as well. I'm expecting to see England and France continue to work together here. Does that fleet in Brest eventually go towards the Mediterranean? Is this now a concrete EF? We'll have to see. My suspicion is that they're still wary of each other to some extent. This is the finals. Thus, the army going down in Liverpool, the fleet going down in Brest. Whereas if they were overtly allied in such a way that they didn't need to disguise themselves, these kind of orders would make less sense. These kind of builds would make less sense. Meanwhile, there's a lot to play for in the Balkans, and with 4 red armies, I am not hating Austria's position. It seems like they've been able to rescue the position with the help of the German, and with the help they've given Turkey, I think Turkey probably is going to work with them for the near term, and that's good news. But we'll see how the conflict moves from here, given that Italy does have an interesting position himself with armies in Venice and Romania and the Albanian fleet as well. A lot of different tactical options on play here. So let's see what happens. So this was surprising to me. The first move that I saw was this right here. Let's draw a circle around it. This move right here. Italian rum to bull supported by Austrian Serbia does get in, combined with the fleet, which combined with Albania to Greece supported by Ionian, which will piff the fleet of Turkey and Greece. There are no valid retreats there. That turned out to be a very strong combination, and we do have the Italian helping the Austrian Vienna to Tyrolia. So suddenly it seems like Italy and Austria are happy to combine here. So very interesting. I'm always excited when powers look for new opportunities to work together based on the position and how it changes. So it's actually pretty exciting to see that. Just the previous year we had an Italian army in Trieste and Vienna, and now they have patched things up and begun working together. So it looks like the Turk was happy to support Bud into Romania, and Budapest did go ahead and actually make that move, but Turkey was also going to Rum himself as a hedge, it seems. But since that Italian army was coming down with support into Bulgaria, he had to retreat to Khan. But I guess going to the black to Rum does serve to balance any army and leave that territory in Romania unoccupied. Meanwhile, we do see France shift his position, and actually does, with English support, get into Holland, Picardy to Belgium. Burgundy tries to get into Ruhr, but will remain there. And Germany was returning to Munich anyway, but it does look like the Austrian and Italians have patched things up, and the French and English are happy to work together. Where does the Russian sit in all of this? Remains to be seen yet. It doesn't look like there was any overt coordination between him and other powers in this spring phase. But let's see what his negotiation brings in the fall. Turn. So right away, I'm gonna start in the Balkans once again, and this looks like a pretty cool move, right? Whenever you see a resource like this used from Turkey, who's being played by Umble the Heap. By the way, I'll leave this in the show notes, but I happen to know that Umble the Heap is going to be playing his second face-to-face tournament coming up next week at Tempest. Good luck to you there. I believe that tournament's being run by Dave Maletsky and others, who I've actually played in a tournament with, though not on the same board. So good luck to you guys. And Umble the Heap does have a cool new newsletter coming out, so I'll link that in the show notes as well. So he plays Armenia to Bulgaria, supported by Khan. And this is a convoy, so using that Black Sea to perfection. And interestingly, this was going to succeed unless it was supported by Serbia, because Aegean is cutting Greece. And interestingly, now Austria. Well, we'll come to Austria, because that Italian army was actually returning to Romania. But so was the Russian fleet with 3 supports, and the Russian is going to gain Romania here, and going to be able to build, and actually will be able to build a second fleet in Sev if he so desires. Meanwhile, the French fleets are swinging down hard into the Mediterranean, and the Austrian has turned around and said, Venice is unsupported, I'm just going to take it. So even though the Italian fleet's coming into the Adriatic, this is not looking so good from the Italian standpoint, because we have a French fleet in the Tyrrhenian Sea. We have an Austrian army in Venice as well. From the English standpoint, we do get into Holland ourselves, and improve our position further, defend against a possible St. Pete to Norway from Russia, but bouncing Russia in Sweden yourself. So from the builds, we'll see Fleet London. So England up to 7 now. England feeling really strong. France steady on 6, going to build in Brest. Really good position. I mean, France, the EF between England and France is up to 13 centers between them. And this is already not an impenetrable position, but already very, very strong. Very, very strong indeed. Austria goes ahead and puts down a fleet in Trieste. Interesting. I can see that one going both ways. Another army won't hurt you, but the fleet does allow you to make some moves into the Adriatic or even Albania. I don't think it's needed yet, but that's a personal preference. I have to look at it more closely in the wonderful sandboxes of Backstabber. Meanwhile, Turkey does regain a good position here, and it seems like Italy and Russia are good for the moment, because Russia has built a North Coast fleet. I think the board starting to understand that there is an EF threat here, and that's an appropriate build in that case. Now these two fleets can occupy some of the attention of these English fleets here, and maybe let Germany survive. But that's going to depend. That's going to depend on if France wants to turn around. But it doesn't seem like he would be incentivized to do so. His position is getting really nice here. in the Mediterranean. He's going to pick up Tunis himself, and if he wants to be really tricky, he can even try a few things. What I'm curious about is how the Turk and the Italian will work together, given the French threat here, and what the relationship is between these powers who seems to have switched sides a few times. Clearly, the Austrian working with the Italian was very short term, and he had revenge in mind, and went ahead and took that. And Austria does seem to have a really good position here. Will he come to the German defense as the German came to his? We'll see. Okay, so let's start in the north. I haven't done that too much. We have England going for St. Pete and at least forcing Moscow to bounce there and decrease his tempo. And interestingly, the German does get support from Russia into Denmark, but Denmark is able to retreat into Sweden. So the question would be, can the German hold on to Denmark in the fall? And so long as the Russians on board again, this army will be able to hold Denmark with that Russian fleet support from Baltic. As expected, England does pick up Tunis, and Italy actually made the move into Ionian himself. What's interesting about that move is sometimes you can bounce another fleet that's also moving there. Although, if you are dislodged, you won't have a retreat available in this particular situation. But from a tempo standpoint, sometimes that's a really good move. If France was trying to slide there himself, you could both block that and keep Tunis, which would be pretty nice. So tactical consideration right there. What else is happening? Without any help from the Austrian, the Italian is not able to defend himself in Greece, and the Turk is able to recapture that. And because Serbia bounced that Italian move to Albania, there were no retreats, and he had to remove as well. That was either very well coordinated or quite fortunate, because it would have meant some kind of a guessing game in the fall. Meanwhile, Italy does try to recapture Venice, but is unable, seeing as Austria has enough units there to defend himself. And the only other change is that we now see, I believe this is French supporting the German into Holland. So France does turn around here, as we were thinking about doing, seen as he doesn't want England to get bigger than he is too quickly. So an interesting strategical decision there. We'll see how it works out. In the fall, it looks like Germany's going to pick up. Too at the expense of England, and that's really going to shift the balance of the board. Although England does get into the Channel and makes a move into Wales here, so perhaps looking to make a convoy into the relatively armyless French homeland. So very interesting. I would like to see the press on this, because it seems like there were some moves anticipated by other players. So was there some information exchanging going on there? So here we go. England does not in the fall attempt that convoy. He actually moves to London, which which to me is interesting, but you know, I guess it allows him some flexibility in the spring. But if he had known that Russia was going to be playing to the Norwegian sea, I wonder if he would have thought again about this, because Yorkshire would have definitely been a better move. And there's nothing threatening London. And it looks like he tried to regain Denmark, but Denmark was double supported, despite his double supported attack. And it looks like England is now going to have to defend himself against this kind of Russian surge that's happening. So in the south, it does look like there is a lot of coordination actually between Austria, Russia, and Turkey. So it seems like they are happy to let Italy be eliminated from this game, so long as they can maintain their threesome for the moment. And the question would be, how long does France, from a strategic standpoint, how long does France want to bolster Germany? Is there some kind of long-term ideas for France to work with Germany and Russia, and then work with Russia against Germany at the right moment, knowing that Italy's probably out of the picture, and so there's not going to be fleets coming his way immediately, and maybe, and I'm still speaking from France's point of view, maybe Turkey and Austria or even Russia will get into it at one point, and I'll have time once England's out of the game to work with Russia against Germany. And if Austria, Turkey, and Russia are fighting, I might get the better of Germany in that split with Russia. So that is a long-term strategic plan that I see from France's perspective, because I don't seem to have enemies right now. I'm helping keep Germany in the game. Maybe England and I aren't that good, but we're not really fighting yet. And I've taken care of the southern border, picked up Tunis. I'm feeling pretty good, actually, how this has turned out. There's not that many fleets in the Med at all, and 2 of the 5 of them are mine, and they're very well positioned here. I'm probably working with Austria to figure out how we carve up the rest of Rome and Naples. And I mean, I can be of great use, I feel, to the Austrian, given that I have those 2 fleets. So there's definitely some concrete ways we can work together there without getting into each other's business between Marseille and Venice. Meanwhile, the spring of 1906 is going to be interesting. What do you do as Russia? You have been helping Germany. Do you want to just support the German? Do you want to support the German into Sweden? Do you want him to support you into Sweden? He's now put down a fleet in Berlin. Where is that fleet gonna go? Maybe you work out a deal where he slides it into the Baltic and you retreat to the Gulf of Bothnia and then combo against Sweden in the fall of 06. That's a concrete situation that would improve Germany's defenses and possibly see a path toward you picking up Sweden, which is a path toward you picking up Norway. So if I'm Russia, I would consider making that offer, because Germany probably won't work with me forever. And it doesn't seem like England's going to want to, given that I'm in the Norwegian Sea. So I want to have a friend in Scandinavia if I can, and I don't want to fight a 2-front war, given that my position is quite precarious in the south, to be honest. Even though we vacated, me and Turkey have vacated the Black Sea, at any point Romania can fall, to a concerted Austrian-Turkish effort. So that's how I'm thinking strategically from Russia's point of view. I mean, from Germany and France's point of view, we've worked together up to this point, and we can actually make some headway against England, as I talked about. It looks like we might even be able to take a home center between the three of us from England, but it all depends on what the players want to do and how the negotiations are going. So let's just jump into 06. Yeah, I like this move from France. He forces the English Channel, knowing that there's a strong possibility the North Sea is going to be occupied. So it seems like if the French and Russian are talking, that this combination of moves guarantees something has to go from England. He can't hold on to Norway and the English Channel in this case. I do, even though the Russian and German have worked together at some points here, notably the Russian helping the German back into Denmark. It does pique my interest to see, this Berlin fleet moving to the Baltic. Obviously, he's going to be way better defensively, and I can also understand the Russian wanting to stay there if they didn't have this idea that I discussed before around just shifting them up a bit in exchange for Sweden, and on the Russian point of view, and in exchange for like much safer defensive position from Germany. But I can see why they may not want to do that as well, since that Russian fleet can't be moved from the Baltic by the German, seeing as he only has the one fleet. We talked about the army build earlier that might have made him less flexible. So, especially since France seems so non-committal about an attack in Germany, and actually was instrumental in keeping Germany alive from the English attack, an earlier fleet from the German might have been useful. But again, we don't know all of the diplomacy that's happening. So what happens here in the south? As suggested about 2 minutes ago, the Russian isn't as safe as he might have thought. Here comes the Turk with help from the Serb. But something looks to have gone wrong. Yes, so let me finish the thought. Armenia, Black Sea, Bulgaria to Rum, and Greece to Bulgaria, just solidifying, gonna be able to force Sev as well. So Turkey's gonna go up 2 this season, or excuse me, this year. So we expect him to take Sev in the fall and pick up Romania and Sev. The Frenchman just improves the position even further coming into the Ionian. It's like quite nice to have an Ionian and Tyrrhenian Sea from France already in the spring of 06. It's pretty nice. It's a pretty big luxury. And just comfortable as well in English Channel and Mao. So really safe position from France, and a lot of opportunities to do a lot of different things. It looks like Austria made a misstep here in defending Venice. So that's unfortunate, but it seems like he'll be able to recapture it in the fall, seeing as he still has 3 units there. And Italy's going to go down a unit because he's probably going to lose Naples. And or Rum. Could lose both. Germany has decided he wants to shore up this position along the front here. There's going to be 3 armies versus 3 armies in terms of Germany, France. So we're gonna see what happens there. And to be honest, Paris to Picardy could be setting up a convoy into Wales or London as well. So we shall see. We shall see. A lot of options for the Frenchman. It depends on how comfortable he is with the German at this point. And I think if I'm France, I may attempt that convoy. I could wait a season as well. The Russian fleet's still in the Norwegian, and I could see how Germany and Russia are playing it in the north in Scandinavia, because I do leave myself a little bit weak with just Belgium and Burgundy. So that's a decision. But let's see what happens. So it does look like he didn't go for that, just supporting in position, same as Germany, and Germany brings his fleet to Kiel. And the Russian goes ahead and supports the German army in Sweden. So they kind of did it the other way around. I was suggesting Russia could have potentially got himself there by relinquishing the Baltic to the German fleet. But meanwhile, England had retreated to Finland, and so was able to support himself into St. Petersburg, while also bouncing the Russian fleet in, coming from Norwegian to Norway. So interestingly, this army on the homeland just holds. Had Russia known, he actually had something of a guessing game here. He could have taken Eddie had he known that. That's part of the tactical decision he had to make. Meanwhile, I like the move from France, not getting too greedy and going to North Atlantic, because it does leave Mao exposed, and a English fleet in the Irish, which can then go to Mao, is a little annoying. You probably have to backtrack the following season if that occurred. And we do see the collapse of Italy right here. Good game, Italy. Played a good game early on, establishing a reasonable position in the Balkans, but didn't have enough allies to hold that together. Turkey does take 7. Rum, gonna build 2. Russia, though, just taking a real big hit here. So it looks like Italy and Russia are both headed for elimination in this one. So Russia actually takes off both of its northern fleets, keeps its 2 units nearest its home centers in the game. I like it. You don't want to give up, even though it does look pretty hopeless. You still have Galicia, you still have Moscow, you still own 2 centers, Warsaw and Moscow. At this point, you're trying to stay in the game and stay relevant. Italy, good game. Austria and France were able to coordinate there. An army go down for France and 2 armies go down for Austria. Austria is looking really, really good now with 7. France on 8. England dropping back from 7 to 5 over the course of the past couple of years. And Turkey looking really, really good on 6. Notice that he did relinquish Romania to the Serb in exchange for this tempo here. Actually, let me go ahead and check that. I want to make sure that that was planned, because that's a big difference. If so, yeah, so that was not planned. Looks like Austria opportunistically went for that himself. It could have been arranged, and he just wanted to guarantee it, providing the support from Serbia for that Budapest to Romania move as the Austrian. And either way, I'm comfortable on 6 as Turkey. I think if I was one of those two powers, I would be more uncomfortable as a 6-center Austria versus that 7-center Turkey, especially since Turkey's more consolidated. And they also probably decided they could gain this tempo here from this forward Turkish army. A Turkish army in Ukraine is usually a really good sign. So you're having a good game. In the same way that these fleets down here for France at this early stage in the game are really useful. So while England's position there looked quite strong for the moment, and it does look, I mean, with these two fleets coming out, we're in a much like we were in a different position just a season before. But certainly you gotta like the position from both Austria, France, and Turkey's seat. Germany certainly has improved considerably. Was on 4 with 4 armies and uncertain how it was going to break out of its position. But Russia, getting them into Den was huge. That was just a really big move because it allowed them to build that fleet and begin to have some relevance and push back against England. So let's see where that progresses. I think from here, I really am comfortable as France. My borders are secure. I have very forward fleets in Tyrrhenian and Ionian, and I'm safe against England. And England and Germany are still entangled here, and there's still some possible combinations between Germany and Russia, the two center Russia. So I guess I expect Russia to go ahead and be eliminated here pretty soon. But I think if I'm England, I probably would keep Russia in the game, seeing as he just did us a nice favor and eliminated these two fleets, and that should help us out. I think I want to support this army holding in Moscow and help keep him in the game as a buffer against the Austrian-Turkish alliance. Now, where does Austria go next? Do they want to just come for Warsaw and Moscow, or is the move now into to push up into Germany, maybe to even shore up Piedmont here? We'll see. I think it depends on how far Austria and Turkey want to work together. They can really put a lot of pressure on these two French fleets to both protect Naples as well as the Ionian, seeing as the Ionian is not owned currently. But I do think that this army in Venice is going to have to spend a tempo to block up Piedmont. So interestingly, it's possible, depending on the trust between Austria and Turkey, that a build in Trieste, an army, would have helped take this supply center in Naples, but would have required some trust from Austria and Turkey, since this Russian army here in Galicia is available, and leaving the home center open for a possible retreat from Galicia would be a little bit dangerous. Let's see how they did it in 07. So the German strikes. The German strikes. The English extend this position to help the Russian. Russia saw nothing else to do except to support himself into Warsaw. I didn't need to do that, but sometimes it's more fun to provide the support so the Moscow army doesn't feel too bored with life. And the English and the German now working together in this particular season, and that allows Belgium to be taken. Kiel to Baltic, and Austria pushing up into Bohemia and Tyrolia. So we're starting to see how they want to play this. And it looks like Germany is happy to support Austria into Warsaw, maybe for a short-term détente between them. If they were to fight here, it might be a little bit of a show. And so this move into Bohemia, interestingly, the previous season now prompts the return as Turkey has gone for the stab. So Turkey, as so often happens, does go for that and forces the Austrian back. And we are going to see Russia eliminated here as well. So that brings us to the winter of 2007. Good game, Russia. We have seen a stab from Turkey. So that puts Turkey on 7, Germany on 7, having taken English help into Belgium. France on 7. And England on 6. So it's a pretty balanced game here. 7-6, 7-7, 7. And let's see how this game progresses. I think this is the part of the mid game that I love, because now, okay, a couple of powers have been eliminated. There's been a number of choices made in terms of the mix of units, armies, and fleets, and the kind of lay of the pieces on the board, what territories they're influencing. There's the mix of prior relationships and cooperation or antagonism. There's also just the basic strategic elements available for each power from here. And there are a few paths forward for each country here. I think each power left in this game has a lot to play for. So I'm very curious to see where they go next. It looks like we'd have to do a quick sandbox here in the Balkans to see what's going to happen. But I feel like a lot depends on what the French and the German player feel about the Austrian and the Turk. From France's point of view, I have a little bit of a problem on my immediate German border. So what should that say to me about how I should play with my fleets in the south? Do I want to help either of Austria or Turkey here? That's an interesting question from a strategic standpoint. Austria has 1, 2, 3, 4 units in this immediate theater, as does Turkey. The English army is here, as are these 2 French fleets. There's another fleet build on the board, but it does appear that Austria and Turkey are fighting. Same for France and Germany. So what does England want to do? They've just put another fleet down as well. And they now have 3 fleets to the 2 French fleets. So is the Frenchman forced to retreat one of these fleets? It's a long way back. to Mao, 2 moves to be able to support Mao, but you might end up losing that, and England could side with Germany for the meantime and come back later and pick up these units. Germany has put down an army, so he's not threatening England at all. So it looks like this could go to a 3-way, should the players want it to go that direction. Let's see what happens next. So Germany does try to push through, but France is able to defend. England opts to convoy his army to Norway. And with that, he's going to be able to pick up centers off of Germany and Scandinavia if he wants to. And Germany does push over into Warsaw, which will hurt Austria. This will hurt Austria. But Austria is, meanwhile, able to improve his position. He both takes Romania and Serbia, seen as the French was cutting support in the Aegean. So it seems the Frenchman has made his choice, and let's see what that means for the fall. Yep, and so the Austrian has returned the favor and helped France into Greece. So it seems like that was just a straight quid pro quo, and that means that Turkey is going to get pushed back. And meanwhile, England also provides the support. So Turkey took a real big hit here, and Germany improved its position. England improved its position. The thing about England here is that they are getting, Germany is getting big, but England can always take centers from behind, as he's done here by taking Denmark. So Germany's position is not secure at all yet, even being on 7 and possibly going to 8, but looks like he's going back to 7 with the Denmark move. But France resourcefully offering and able to pick up a build here now, and so that build could be used for a fleet in Brest to make inroads against England if he wants to. It seems like he's totally comfortable here defending with these 3 armies against these 3 armies of Germany. So let's see where the builds are. And he does go for the fleet. France does. And Turkey decides to keep the Ionian and remove the Aegean. So interesting. You know, he's saying, I am going to be really annoying with this Ionian fleet. I will be very annoying with that fleet if I can. Now the thing is that even if I take the Ionian as Turkey in the spring, I can't hold it in the fall, assuming that somehow... actually, I take that back. That is my mind going a little numb. We can say make a random move to Naples, and even if we get dislodged, now we can retreat to Tunis and hold it in the fall. The only way that we wouldn't be able to is if somehow the Frenchmen played to Tyrrhenian Sea and to Ionian, and we had already moved to Tunis, but we wouldn't be so silly as to do that ourselves. We're going to wait for the retreat if they want to take Ionian, and then or wait for the dislodgement and then take the retreat to Tunis ourselves. Now the Frenchmen could just slide into Aegean and get annoying, but we can defend here. Although it looks like the Austrian is just going to continue rolling. So now the Turk and the Frenchmen are probably in a discussion where the Turk is saying, look, do you want Austria to win this game? Because if you do, probably just continue helping him. Meanwhile, I feel like the English player may be regretting that support into Sev, because the Turk may, who knows what the Turk would have liked to have done in Sev, but I think it keeps a little bit more balance of power on this side of the board. And yes, now there's one less unit that is antagonistic towards you that could disrupt a support, but it feels like being very supportive of Austria there doesn't accomplish too much unless you're counting on some of these Austrian armies now pulling up into Germany at the right moment as you make your descent into Germany as England. So let's see if that happens in 09. Here we go. So looks like right away Austria is able to get into Bulgaria. And Austria is able to get into Bulgaria, but Turkey is able to get back into Sev, because the English support of Sev was cut by the German army. Now, had Livonia been the attacker on Moscow, Moscow could have just been taken. That's interesting to note. Although that would have meant that Livonia became English, and Livonia to Prussia in the fall would now put an army, behind two of these German centers. But something to note from a tactic standpoint there. Livonia to Moscow, supported by Warsaw, would have succeeded in this case. The Frenchman goes ahead and comes to Western Med, realizing that he wants to defend Tunis, and the Turk retreats to Tyrrhenian Sea. Excuse me. The Turk made the move to the Tyrrhenian Sea, and Naples and Aegean self-bounced there. I am not sure if that was intended. I'm not sure if that was intended. And Rome attempted to go to Tyrolia, which doesn't work. So that also looks like a misorder. But that's okay. And we otherwise have a little bit of a shuffling of units here. Albania to Adriatic, Trieste, Albania. Lining up on Greece. It looks like the Turk may be taking Greece back here. Let's see. I'm very curious. I think that is a possibility coming up here. France does get out into the Mao. But still, two fleets working against two fleets here. And England will be taking Sweden in the fall. So here we go. England is able to recapture. Belgium. Belgium has changed hands so many times in this game, and the English player does help Austria, since he's trying to move against Germany himself. by capturing Sweden. He's really getting a really good position across Scandinavia here and the north. He's already into Moscow. That's fantastic. If you're going to solo as England and you have Moscow, that's very good for you. You usually have to get either Tunis or Warsaw, as well as all of, kind of all of these centers, sometimes like so. Sometimes Rome, sometimes Venice. So that's very good from the English point of view. He's got such a fleet superiority over Germany here. It's at the right moment, it's going to be tough for Germany to hold that. And there's not a lot of pressure from France on England's backside. They're kind of just dancing, keeping each other honest in this region over here, the Frenchmen and the Englishmen. And meanwhile, the fight continues between Turkey and Austria. And Austria is having his way here so far. Although the Frenchman smartly goes ahead and supports the Turkish fleet right here into Rome, which is going to ensure that Turkey does not have to remove, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4. The Turkish will not have to remove a unit. I think Germany is going to go down 2 here, however, which will secure some of the balance of power. And this move from France is huge. Piedmont to Tyrolia. The move from Rome to Tyrolia, which is invalid last season, is possibly going to come back to bite Austria a lot since he's spread his armies like so. If he had been able to get into Venice, now he has a guessing game. He can look to bounce in Tyrolia. He can even look to bounce in Tyrolia and play Adriatic to Venice to keep this French army out. The Frenchman could play into Tuscany. It's not the end of the world in that situation. Because by attempting that, this army in Venice could have just played into Piedmont and then Marseille himself. So that would have been really a thorny situation and actually a really good sandbox right there as well. Had this actually been played last season correctly, but it was misordered to Tyrolia. So now, even though the Austrian picks up this amazing position here, it does have a French army in Tyrolia. Let's see the builds come down. Trieste, Vienna for Austria. Marseille for France. Turkey's flat on 4. And Germany took a big hit there. Really big hit. Lost Warsaw. Lost Holland, lost Denmark, lost Sweden. Had to pick up Holland and the Gulf of Bothnia and Silesia, keeps Prussia-Livonia, Munich, and Ruhr. So where is this going next? I still feel really good about Austria's chances going up to 10. Austria was down to 4 units at one point and looked like it had no friends. And Turkey came to the rescue in the early game for Austria, as did Germany. So this is looking pretty good for Austria. However, there is a mix of French units, German units that can coordinate against Austrian, even English units. This doesn't look like it's going to be a solo from Austria, given the caliber of players here. But they have to play it right. There's a fleet superiority in terms of the friendly Turkish and French units here. The question will be, can England stay patient enough? He could work to eliminate Germany himself, but does that allow these red armies to break into Germany and threaten a solo? That's going to require some patience from England. If he's too greedy, he might end up giving up the solo. So let's see what happens. Okay. The French do get into the Ionian, but the Austrians happy to retreat into the Tyrrhenian Sea. Austria looks to improve its position on all sides. No allies for Austria anymore. I think this is now a game of, can we prevent the solo? But France and France and England still have something to play for themselves. They don't have a too shabby position themselves. Munich decides to retreat to Kiel here, which does allow the Tyrolean army into Munich, and the Austrian was coming anyway. And England does take the Channel back from France, although France slides forward into Holland and Belgium himself. So now, very interestingly here, the Mid-Atlantic is open. So keep an eye on that for the fall as well. Turkey just trying to hold on. Fortunately, the Black Sea is there. Very interesting, actually. This retreat is, to me, I have to look at it. Ionian to Tyrrhenian, instead of retreating to the Aegean, which would really allow the Austrian to make inroads against the Turk. It looks like, does it not? I would have Aegean, Bulgaria, Greece, which is available for convoy, by the way, into Smyrna. I can cut Armenia myself. I can cut Khan. I can defend here from this attack. In the fall, I could support myself into Sev while also moving Sev to Armenia and have some kind of a brace there if the Turk took the offensive position, while also supporting myself into Khan. That's an automatic center. So I'm wondering about this retreat here, but maybe he's looking at Spain and saying I can take Spain in a move from now. I'm not really sure about that, but it is nice having a fleet in the Western Med as Austria at one point as well. So let's see what happens in the fall. Looks like Austria attempts the convoy to Portugal. That's not going to work though. I like the try though. Never hurts to send overtures. It does look like Armenia will sneak into Sevastopol. Austria was not expecting that. And it does look like Austria's plan was to just go ahead and take Rum himself, which is why he retreated to the Tyrrhenian Sea. But in the meantime, he does give up Piedmont. He does give up Piedmont, and that could be important from a stalemate line perspective, because there's also going to be a French army in Bohemia now. But the Austrian does pick up Moscow, and that bodes well for him. Possibly having a shot at St. Pete. And this little skirmish here continues between the Western Triangle. Where does that leave us from a builds? Puts Austria still on 10, but Turkey having a massive escape, in my opinion. Could have been down to 3 had this retreat from the Ionian not gone this way, but gone this way. Khan would have fallen 100%. Am I wrong on that? I think it would be 100%. And Turkey would have been down to 3 units. So depending on the scoring system we're playing, I need to check that with you guys. That's something to consider, because Turkey could have been eliminated here. But maybe he thought I can eliminate Turkey at one point in the future, and I need to continue pressing my advantage in this direction. France gets Belgium and the build. England picks up 2 builds despite losing Moscow. Liverpool and London are the builds. And let's head into the spring. Head into the spring. Germany now down to 2 units. Was looking so good. Was at one point on 8. At one point on 8, but did not have a good balance of fleets to England's fleets. And that hurt. That hurt because Austria was able to press up, as we've seen. And England was able to press down. So, I see no moves in spring 1911, which means there must have been a draw vote. There must have been a draw vote, so congratulations to the players participating in this draw. Again, I think I'll have to just post in the show notes or in the comments, where I hope you also join in the discussion. But I'm going to post in the comments once I hear from Tyler what the scoring system looked like for this final game. Was it a top board situation? Or did it matter that Germany and Turkey took part in this draw? I'm going to nevertheless say congratulations to the remaining powers. We have Austria on 10, England on 9, France on 8, Germany on 2, and Turkey on 5. And good luck, better luck next time to Italy and Russia, who didn't play poorly at all from my perspective. And I want to say thank you to all the team at Nexus for giving me a chance to review this game, and I hope you guys join in soon. I'm going to be putting up a lot more videos about diplomacy because I want to learn this game. I think it's going to be not only a game of the past. I think diplomacy is going to be a game of the future, whether it's face-to-face or online. And I expect to ally with a lot of you, join forces to make diplomacy a game of the future. And probably in the next few months I'll start sharing what I'm doing in terms of building out an online like diplomacy tournament interface. And I think a lot of people are working on this together in various ways, and I hope that will give us a chance to elevate the diplomacy hobby, maybe even above this kind of gentle term of hobby, into something even more competitive at the level of the zeitgeist. So I really do hope you enjoyed that. This has been a great game of diplomacy from the Nexus Season 2 finals. And good luck to all of you guys who are currently playing in Season 3. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed. And if you have any comments, just go ahead and leave them, and I'll be checking that frequently. I've also put up a new site over at diplostrategy.com. Diplostrategy, DIPLO strategy.com. All right, guys, take care, and great game. That was fun.